once we knew we were going to be closed down for SNL, I went out into the woods and then I could finally think freely again. And that's when I really started processing the loss of Owen.
I'm Kelly Corrigan, and this is Kelly Corrigan Wonders. And today we're wrapping up a month-long series called Love Stories for a Weary World. We thought that that was just what the summer called for as we were all trying to adjust to the new version of reality that COVID has left us with. Today, my guest is Cecily Strong. She's one of the great comedic actors on Saturday Night Live, and she's written a book called This Will All Be Over Soon, which is a little bit about the pandemic, but it's also about falling in love, and it's also about grieving the loss of someone truly dear to her. So, join us. Welcome back to Kelly Corrigan Wonders. I'm Kelly Corrigan. Cecily Strong of SNL, and most recently a fantastic show called Schmigadoon, lost someone she loved, and still loves, of course, dearly during the pandemic. She also found love. She's written this unguarded, totally earnest memoir called This Will All Be Over Soon, and we have been emailing about the experience of telling true and painful stories in public. I asked her to help me finish off the series about love because, as we all know too well, love often involves great loss. Though we had tons of fun talking about Saturday Night Live shenanigans, we did start by talking about her cousin, Owen.
I'm very waspy, my family. And so I only have 4 cousins total. And I don't know 2 of them very well. And I was older with Owen and Lita, who Owen had like bright red hair and Lita had a very husky, funny voice. And they were kind of like my babies. But we grow up and I went to college and I sort of wasn't as involved with my family. And then when I came out to New York to audition for SNL, Owen was there. Just all of a sudden, my cousin was in my life again and kept showing up. And I was like, oh, is that what family does? And it was like, I was relearning about family, and they sort of, Owen and Lita became like siblings to me. And then came the day that we found out he had glioblastoma because he had migraines, and he joked he's the one that went on WebMD, diagnosed himself, and was actually had brain cancer. For a year and a half, I got to have this wonderful relationship with my cousins where we got to say that we love each other.
Yeah.
Which is the thing that we don't always get with people. And, you know, I got to have that. I got to wear a shirt on my show that said Going Strong. And my wonderful castmates made a video for Owen. And it was like, I got to have all of that, which, you know, in retrospect, and especially with COVID and seeing how fast people go and these huge numbers reported every night of loss. If I had to lose someone, which we have to lose people, I was lucky to have gotten all those moments with them. And then myself going through COVID, there was no better kind of navigator for me than Owen, who had just gone through brain cancer and was a person that told his dad, you know, despite the brain cancer, this has been the best year of my life. Because he fell in love and he made music and he was always the first on the dance floor. And he just lived very well. And he lived very well with the hugest, scariest thing looming over him.
Yeah, I mean, nobody survives that, right? I had a friend who died of that, and he was a doctor, and he knew.
Yeah.
And I said, what do your doctors say to you? And he said that the diagnosis was eat something you love every day, laugh, and have novelty. Like seek novelty.
Oh.
So if you always get the ham sandwich, get the turkey sandwich. If you always take a left when you go for a walk with your wife, take a right. And we think about it all the time in our house. I lost a friend who had ovarian cancer, and I lost her over 7 years. And I do feel like it's an access point for kind of the deepest humanity within us. And that you must feel like you learned so much watching him do that.
Still learning. Yeah. I mean, I think when I started writing, it was sort of me trying to figure out how he was so positive, you know, which is what a thing to explore. I cared about the most and what I wanted, my family especially, and the people in the book, my friends, was like, I want this to be a love letter to all the people I care about, because I don't know how long we get with each other. And so I'm so happy for what I've had with them and what I'll continue to have.
Yeah. I think it's really generous of you to point out the difference of a situation where you know the person is probably going to die versus like a COVID diagnosis where, all of a sudden they're going in the hospital and it could be anything from a quick overnight to you never going to see them again.
Right. Even though Owen had cancer, it still felt a little bit like that to me. And then I think this is sort of, I'm going off a little bit, but in opening myself up to figuring out that grief, because really I hadn't talked about it because I thought it was so big. And my friend Erin came to his service and she was like, this is a big one. This is a big one. It was just like, I don't know how to handle something so heavy. And I just feel like I'm walking around just like I can't speak. It's like dropping an atomic bomb in a room. And so it was finally a time to process, and then opening myself up to that, I got to process a lot of things that I realized maybe I hadn't fully gone through, and sort of in what I'm calling processing, I also got to have little celebrations and tell the stories of people that I have lost, that I miss the friendship. And in our desire to move on and heal, it's like we have to put those things away and we don't get to revisit them often because they're hurt too.
Yeah, but also it is like the ultimate bonding material. Like I think about it as like a substance that like connects you to other people because it's like a before and after moment. Like when you lose someone out of time. Like I lost my dad, but he was 85, and then Liz died when she was 46, and I gave her eulogy in front of her 8-year-old and her 10-year-old and her 12-year-old. And when somebody is that young and in the middle of it and is a peer, it's just a whole different experience because there's all these elements to it that just aren't there when it's your nice old dad. It's threatening, and it brings up mortality, and it brings up the risk and uncertainty that we live with day in and day out that can be really anxiety provoking to talk about, which I also thought was a really generous part of reading your book, is that you're really open about being an anxious person. And what could make an anxious person more anxious than losing someone in one way and then watching the world lose a whole lot of people in another way all at the same time?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough to say because so much of anxiety is not rational or connected to thoughts. It's easy to be honest about it because I've never felt like I had to hide it. My family's very open. My brother dealt with a lot growing up. So we were seeing psychiatrists since I was 6, 7, 8. It's never been like an issue in my family. So it would feel so bizarre to try to talk about myself and not mention anxiety, but that's so New York of me now.
So tell us a little bit about Owen and his music.
Sure. So he had a band called the Evening Fools, and it was just him and a couple friends. He sang, and the last song Owen recorded right before he went back into the hospital, which would end up being his last week. He recorded this song, Stay the Night, and he somehow arranged the strings for it. I don't know how he knew how to arrange strings.
He's kind of a can-do person.
Very much so, yes. He was, I write a lot of our texts in the book, and I always laugh at once he says, we went to the Knicks game, and said, okay, so they're playing the Bulls tonight. Would you, Cecily Strong, dunk on your former team? I was like, well, I don't think I could dunk. And then they kept going like, oh, come on, or so, not with that attitude. You couldn't. I think that's very Owen.
Yeah, believe it. Believe the good.
Yeah. Positivity is very much an active choice and a conscious choice. And it's like I'm giving myself the gift of not calling these things coincidences if they feel like they could be a little bit magical, because, we need a little magic to deal with heavy things.
Yeah, for sure. Would you read? There's a little section in your book that I particularly liked about
Oh,
magic and coincidences and the way people sometimes see the world in the wake of a really weird loss.
I know you emailed me about this. I was like, oh God, this is the part where everyone's going to know how nuts I am.
But that's the thing, Cecily. Everybody's nuts.
That's
Everybody's
true.
nuts in this way. Like when people lose somebody they really love that they didn't really think they could live without, you just have making all kinds of bizarre links in your mind and reading the world in a different way and looking everywhere for some kind of wink.
Yeah. And you start saying it to people and they either know what you're talking about or they don't. I've always sort of felt like I had a weird thing with electricity, especially when I moved into my apartment in New York in 2012. I remember a day, my first year or so in New York, I was feeling particularly low and lonely. And when I got home, I discovered all my light bulbs had burned out in the kitchen, entryway, and living room. I had to replace every light bulb. And my friends used to joke about my ghost in the printer because I had a printer that seemed to have a mind of its own. Even though it had been powered off for hours, it would just start printing, just a blank sheet of paper or turning itself on. This was especially jarring in the middle of the night when you know you shouldn't be hearing the sounds of an office in your dark, empty apartment. I went to a medium once, and when I asked her if my apartment was haunted, she said it was me. Apparently, I had boundary issues with people in this life and people on the other side. And I told you I'm nuts in many ways. The week I got back to New York after Owen passed, I had a couple of weird electricity moments, and they were both in my bathroom. The day before I was going over to the apartment to see Lita, Ed, and Laurel, I was sitting on the toilet, shock and grief making me move so slowly, even just to pee. I was sitting on the toilet in a daze, and something caught my eye. I have an electronic scale on the floor, and it turns itself off unless you turn it on. That night, for about 5 seconds or so, the scale started flashing random numbers, like a calculator breaking or something. It stopped after I'd had long enough to realize what had happened. I didn't think too much of it, but still mentioned it to Lita, just in case. The next day, right before dinner, I was in my bathroom again, getting ready to leave, and one of the 3 light bulbs over my sink started to flicker. And I wasn't sure if it was my eyes or the light flickering. So I looked at it for a bit, trying to adjust my eyes. And then it made a popping sound, and the light flashed and went out completely. Not totally an explosion, and that it didn't shatter, but it certainly was a bit of a show. Made me smile a little because I'd been unsure about the flashing numbers on the scale and the flickering light. So this was like being hit over the head, like, here, is this obvious enough for you? And in that moment, I think I laughed a little and then thought, okay, I get it. And bathrooms are funny and it's hard to find things funny right now, but can the bathroom not be our place? So I'll keep my eyes open in case I see them elsewhere in the bird song or the daffodils or exploding bathroom light bulbs.
Yeah. So good. I really can't tell you how much I loved reading your book. It's so unvarnished. There's something kind of innocent about it. Like you're not intellectualizing things that shouldn't be intellectualized. It's just like feeling in public. I feel like you're feeling in public. And that's really a gift to people. I mean, I feel like people are going to find so much comfort in the book, not because you're telling them how to be or how to recover or what the 3 steps are to processing grief, but rather just that you're showing it.
You do that in therapy and acting school too, where you just have to just be with yourself. But it's a bit, this COVID feels like being in the eye of a tornado and in that stillness and just saying like, what do I feel right now? And sitting every day last summer and going, okay, I'm going to write today. What am I going to say? And just like asking myself those questions. That's very helpful. I'm hopeful that people at least feel some permission to go through whatever they're going through. Because I think there's a lot of trauma after this. And I think people are sort of rushing past and it's doing weird things. My hope for people is that they at least feel in that moment that they can take a second to honor whatever they're dealing with. If you weren't mentally ill before, you're a little mentally ill now. And the mentally ill people are just kind of fucked.
But maybe not, because maybe if you've been in therapy for a long time, you have some skills in terms of sitting with hard things.
Yes, I love therapy. And I think it's okay to talk about depression and anxiety because it's like, well, I feel proud of dealing with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an achievement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's take a short break here and we'll be right back with Cecily Strong. Hey, welcome back to Kelly Corrigan Wonders. I'm talking today with Cecily Strong from SNL about her cousin, Owen, and the man that she met during the pandemic. Did you fall in love during the pandemic?
I did. Yes, I forgot. That's in the book too. I've been single for so long, and my whole family, it's a long line of divorce. I mean, it was like we created divorce. We're the boss. And everybody's been doing their part to keep it going. And so it's sort of like it wasn't as important. And I have learned to have family in other ways. And my life has always gone on a different path. But then I fell for someone, and right at a time where I lost Owen and was sort of like, okay, you know what? Because I just lost this big love and I am examining love, I wanted to make sure I was open, that I wasn't closing myself off. And there are compromises to make, but I think I was more ready, and somehow I ended up falling in love.
That's so awesome. Tell us about meeting him.
I met him at a Christmas party, and I was at a table with my friend Kevin, who's now my roommate, Kevin. That's my other love story, I think, is my friendship with Kevin. And now that we get to live with each other and keep each other company. And so again, chosen family. But we were at a party, and my new agent came over and he was like, why don't you come meet this guy at the bar? And I was very much like, no, why does everybody want to set me up? Am I sad to people? Is it sad for you to see me sitting in lounge? But then I had a couple more sips of whatever I was drinking. I was like, all right, he's cute. And I like to kiss.
Yeah, you're very open about liking to smooch.
Yeah, I like to smooch. And I felt, I was liking my outfit or whatever. Weird look I was going. Everything is like a costume to me, so it's never an outfit. I love wigs and I love costumes.
You meet this guy at a Christmas party, and you like your outfit, and you had just the right amount to drink, and
then he went to Cuba, and I went to LA. It was sort of like, well, this will go like all my other little whatever they are go. But we talked a lot, and he's a good talker. He's very smart, and he knows that I'm smart, which is important. I'd not had a lot of experience with people that could talk things through and wouldn't just run away. And I don't even know if it's helpful to say that about yourself. And I realized like the one thing that I'd accepted, like instead of being, I'm accepting this relationship and I'm a marriage person, but the one thing I accepted was that I'm a monster that nobody can date. And it was sort of like, why have I let that live in me?
Right. I mean, yeah, I've said before to my kids, I have an 18-year-old and 19-year-old, like basically you live in your head. So make it nice in there. Don't hang ugly art on the walls.
That's great.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. My favorite thing, my therapist, when I started seeing her, she was just like, your thoughts aren't real, just so you know. It was like, and the really unhelpful ones, we'll just try to pluck them out. And she just made it sound so easy. And it's like, you know what? Why am I thinking everything's real if it's terrible? Those are the things I'm believing in.
I used to have panic attacks, just like a little spell of about 6 months when I turned 30. And I met my husband later that year, and I was telling him I had these panic attacks, and they're so awful. And, you just feel like you're going to jump in the nearest ambulance and go to the ER and say, like, I'm breaking from the inside. I don't know what's going on, but you're going to have to knock me out because I can't bear to feel this way another second. And he said, in that way that really emotionally stable people do, he goes, do you ever talk back to your thoughts? And it was like, fuck you. Like, I don't know how to do that. If I knew how to do that, Edward, I wouldn't have had to go into therapy to see this woman for like $50 an hour, which at the time when I worked at United Way was just a whole lot of money. But that's the funny thing, because it goes back to what your therapist said, which is that your thoughts aren't real. So the guy is smart, and the guy knows you're smart, and you're good at talking to each other, which is essential because you're separated.
Yeah. So it's a lot of talking.
And there's not a part of you that's afraid to get attached to someone.
I don't think so. I'm not necessarily optimistic about relationships. And I think I probably do some self-sabotaging that I don't even realize. But I think what's good about he and I is that we could stop each other from sabotaging. And I think he's just a really good person. And I enjoy having good people around me. And we joke, we have really so little interests in common. And we'd always say like, well, that's okay as long as we have shared values.
Mm-hmm.
It's a funny thing. It's much more of a Jack thing than me thing, but I enjoy saying it now.
Yes, you sound very emotionally sophisticated when you say that, Cecily.
And they're not my words. That's why.
Yeah, yeah, my daughter just graduated from high school said at some point she'd had enough and she had a fit. And she was pretty even keeled about the whole damn thing. And then what triggered it is that we watched Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Uh-huh.
And she said, "Is this what your high school was like?" And I said, not totally, but not totally not like this. Like there's a lot of making out and going to parties and people smoking pot. And then she just burst into tears and she's like, "I barely went to high school. I went to high school for 2.5 years and I haven't done anything. I haven't gone to any pool parties like that, like in that movie."
Yeah, I get it. I get that rage. You have to deal with it because and you have to sort of go, yeah, it's not fair and it hurts. But you're still standing here. And so what do you do to work around that?
Yeah. Or just take it with you. Like somehow you have to like, I think that's the big difference in the way that people think about grief now versus say 5 or 10 years ago, maybe even that recently, which is, that you move through these stages and then you get to the end and it's over. And I think more now it's like the metaphor is that it's just like part of what you carry with you. It's on your back and you don't have to touch it every day and you don't have to talk about it every day, but it's in the backpack and it's not going anywhere. Tell me, what's the best thing about being on SNL and what's the hardest thing?
An easy answer right away, though, is the people I work with. I love so much, and I'm just very lucky to get to work with them. And I genuinely think they're all so brilliant. And at the same time, there's so many that are just so kind and unbelievable and supportive. And I'm still a person that is a little bit surprised and moved every time I see when someone's really kind and warm and open to me.
That's funny. I think I am too, because I always come home and say, "You won't believe it." Like that, like as if that's so unbelievable.
Right. Yes, I know. I think it's because of having social anxiety. I'm a little bit awkward around people. So the people that are just so naturally warm and caring, it's always like, wow, how do you do that?
Yeah.
So that's my easy answer.
I've gone to see Saturday Night Live be filmed.
Oh, really?
So I had a friend who worked at NBC for a long time. And so I got to go a couple different times. And we went backstage and I got to walk through the doors, and I get to go see the costume room and all that kind of stuff and the wigs and just unbelievable, oozing with creativity and that spirit of sure, what the hell, why not? And I remember watching and during the commercials, they're scrapping things and pulling new skits in and taking out some of the scenery and pulling in this giant wooden set that they changed their mind at the last second. And there's little Lorne like walking around on stage. Like the idea that he would be there walking around so involved in every skit, I just didn't see that coming.
It's a bizarre, I had no idea how the show worked. When I got there, I was like, so where is backstage? This is all backstage until it's on stage. They've got 2.5 minutes to take something down and put something up. And it's so funny it's like when your sketch is cut, so stupidly heartbreaking.
Yeah. So I think there's no way that there can't be some sense of hope and disappointment week after week where you're hoping your skit gets put in.
Oh my God. Some sense. It's in a vacuum. It's insane how dramatic sketch comedy can be. Yeah. And I've taken on the role of healing my former self there by talking to the new people and being like, I know it feels like shit and it's insane why it feels so bad right now, but it's okay. And I show them where I have snot stains on my couch from just like sobbing, going, well, Dana Carvey cried in his room too. Somebody told me once.
Yeah, but you're also like super tired. And so I just picture you all so tired and so hopeful and so invested in your little skit and then having it cut and thinking like, ugh, I hate the way
Yeah,
this feels and I hate that I feel this bad.
and it's humiliating to have tears in your eyes because you're not going to get to play a chicken and you cared about it so much. And it's crazy because then it's over by Tuesday. You're on to something else.
Right.
So that's the good thing about it. It feels so big in this moment, but then yes, you sleep for a couple hours and then it's over. It's a new week. It's a new show.
Who's your favorite host so far?
That's tough. I've really liked a lot of hosts. It's always great when somebody comes back. You know, I think Kristen is so funny. Will Ferrell is so funny. Maya, it's very cool to work with them. Chris Hemsworth was like the first one that blew me away of like, this is not my world. I don't know about action movies. This person's not going to be exciting to me. And then he charmed us all.
Mm.
Reese Witherspoon was somebody that I felt like, oh my God, we're going to be best friends. And then I felt like we were best friends that week. I just knew it. Yeah. Biggest disappointment I have for people is that I really never get to talk to the music guest. You know, they come in on Thursday when we're not there to rehearse, and then they rehearse again on our meal break on Saturday. But there's been a couple musical performances where I'm like, what is happening? How do we get to see this? Especially this year because there was no audience. So it was really like, this is a private concert.
Yeah. All is good with Jack, and the season is over. And in the end of your book, you mentioned that you were going to Canada to shoot something that you were really excited about.
Yes. And it's about to come out, a Schmigadoon, which I'm so, God, I watch it at least once or twice a week. I think it's so wonderful and magical. It's a musical show with legit Broadway stars filming at a time that the theaters were shuttered. So it was really special to get to do that. And it was like being whisked away. I mean, Vancouver is so beautiful. I'd never been. And just like in the middle of our COVID isolation, and then we go isolate in Vancouver, filming in this magical place. And then this set is built to be a magical place inside that. So it felt very surreal and lovely. I cried good tears every day. And we got really close. We got to say I love you to each other a lot then. There's another Owen lesson. If you have something nice to say to somebody, I try to say it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what all the holding back is. I mean, who thinks they have that much time that they can just withhold?
I feel like I have been a holder backer, and a lot of it is self-doubt and anxiety. And I was just having a conversation with Jack's mom about this the other day, where I had a friend on Mother's Day and I had totally forgotten this. He'd lost his mom, and I knew that, but I'd just forgotten in that moment. And I like yelled across the room, like, "Hey, was your mom coming?" And then he said, "No, not this year." And I felt so, normally I just would let it go. But I was like, I'm going to address this because it is awkward. But I just said, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I know that you lost your mom, and this must be maybe a tough holiday because people like me saying things like that. And I'm sorry about that." But then he just said, "Thank you. I appreciate that." I was like, it's a good lesson. We should say nice things to each other. And if we fuck up, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But it does take a little bit of courage. And if you do have that, I don't know, underlayer of anxiety that's kind of working against that, it takes
Right.
a little extra boost of courage or inspiration, which is what Owen gave you, is that extra.
Right. Yeah. It's just a choice. My friend Graham, he said, you're going back and acknowledging all these acts of kindness or just these small things that we do to each other. And you're saying thank you for all of them, which is such a choice. And it's such a thing that you have to make yourself do. And then you get to reap all the benefits of doing that.
Yeah. And you kind of get to live it twice.
Yeah.
In the experience of it, and then the actively kind of remembering or recalling the experience of it.
It's like you live it twice, and then you live it through each of your friends texting you, letters from your uncle after they read it. It opens up all these other connections. And I feel like I was talking to Lita about it, like a network of angels now. And it's when people will write to me about their losses or their people, and it's like we're all connected, and it's sort of that's how Owen will keep going too, and his story will keep going because I'll make new connections from this book that was influenced by Owen. So he's still going.
Yes, yes. I told you a while ago in an email that I'm so glad to have written so much about my friend Liz for that reason, which is that one, everyone who ever knew her and loved her, and she lived a big, full life on both coasts and 3 different schools. She had a lot of impact. All of those people know where to find me. And her kids will have this thing that they enjoyed when they were young to read it, but now they'll enjoy it as they grow older. One of them told me that her friend had read it, and
Oh,
how
wow.
nice for her to have a friend who could know so much about Liz, that there's this source out there that could explain her. And of course, people who Andy, the husband, gets to know over time, like all those people read it. And it's just been nothing but a source of connection, a repeated connection with many people,
Yeah.
the children as they change and grow. And so you'll have that,
Yeah, I remember you saying that to me too. And it's like now I'm getting to start to see that, what it does for other family members to get to see. And because I think, especially with Owen's parents, I don't know how it's hard to remember the person when there's so much pain. His absence is so active.
Mm.
So it's hard to remember. It's like sometimes you need someone who is a little removed to just tell you funny stories and get to know them again.
Right, right.
So I love that her kids' friends read it. It's so cool. It's like this was a whole person.
Yeah.
Here's the bad jokes they made.
Right. Yeah, I remember my cousin's son died when he was 19, and years later I found a picture of him in my mom's house, and I said, "Do you want me to send this to you?" And she said, "No, you put it up on the bulletin board. And when people come by and say, 'Who's that?' you tell them about Aaron Zencraft."
That's awesome. I really like that.
Yeah.
Oh, that got me. That's nice.
You put a picture of Owen up on the bulletin board, Cecily Strong.
I got it.
Yeah, I think people really don't want their name to disappear from conversation. I think that's actually a really painful part of loss, is that some people, especially young losses, makes people so uncomfortable they never talk about them again. And that's just the exact opposite of what the people who have lost want.
Right. And we all tiptoe around grief and how we're dealing with it. And so it's like, I think actually people would rather they're feeling it. You don't have to not address it.
Right. Yeah. Don't kid yourself that you're going to put it on their mind. It's on their mind.
Right.
I'm so happy I got to talk to you. I love your book, and I'm excited for people to read it.
I likewise. I'm so glad I got to do this. And again, this is like one of the coolest parts of the book is now it's like I get to have a conversation with Kelly Corrigan. It's awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
You're a part of my story now.